Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to Life Well Lived by Omobola Stephen. It's an engaging and enlightening talk show on life, relationships, and the business of life. Grab a cup of juice and just chill. Life Well Lived by Omobola Stephen. Live life. Live fully.
Thanks for tuning into our podcast. We love having you here, and it's our mission to bring you all the latest and greatest tips, skills, and know-how to make you the best that you can be. We know that you have it in you, and we're going to show you how. Now, let's get started.
Good to have you on the show. Good to have you on the show once again. This is Omobola Stephen, your host on Life Well Lived by Omobola Stephen. The show focuses on expert and professionals who have disruptive mindset insight to share with the audience on the show. Now, personal development and also self-improvement is a lifelong process that we all need to embrace in life in order to move from where we are to where we need to be. Now, it's the work that needs to be done. It's really an effort, but if you don't give up, you're really going to get to where you want to get your life. Now, today I have Anthony Poponi, who is a workplace consultant and professional speaker on the show, who's going to be talking much more about happiness. And I know that's something we want to talk about. And now it's going to be a disruptive kind of conversation. So I'm looking forward to a great time with you, Anthony. Welcome to the show once again.
Yeah, thank you, Omobola. Would it be disruptive if I decided that we don't talk about happiness and we talk about sadness? That would be weird, right? I mean, I don't know if that's what we want to do.
I like that. Come on, bring it on. All right.
All right, you're off to a bad start. I'm already a troublemaker.
Good
Great.
to have you again on the show. Now, Anthony, you are an happiness coach. You have an expertise in this area. Now, I'd like you to tell my audience a bit about the myths of happiness. Is there any or are there any?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of happiness myths out there. And, the work that I do is grounded in positive psychology, which has been around for several decades now. And I think the thing that's really amazing about positive psychology is that it has a lot of rigor to it. It's a discipline. It's a science. And they've put the same level of effort and research to creating an understanding of what happiness really is, and then how to also shift your happiness. And so I'm not really here to kind of share my opinion with you. I want to share things that we know from the science of positive psychology that we know can actually impact your happiness. So one of the things that's really insightful is when they looked at kind of what affects our happiness the most, like where we are and how happy we are, not necessarily in a moment, but in the scale of call it weeks or months or whatever, you kind of have a range of happiness points in that time frame. And that's malleable. You can change that. And a lot of people put a lot of focus on a very small part of what actually affects how happy we are. We call those circumstances in life. And the science says, only about actually 10% of those circumstances in our life affect our happiness. And we think that they affect it a lot more. And what I mean by that is, we talk about circumstance, we talk about what age you are, how you identify as male, female, or if you identify as somebody from the LGBTQ community, or how educated you are, what country you live in, what religion you are, how many kids you have, how much money you make. A lot of people think that those circumstances affect their life a lot more than they do how happy they can be overall. And what we know about the science is we have all these massive data sets of all these people in the world and how happy they are, and then we know who they are. We know what they look like demographically. And that all of those things together really only account for about 10% of the variability for how happy someone is. So we give it all of this influence of, I would be happy if I'm rich. You might be a little bit happier if you're rich, if you're incredibly poor. Or I might be happy if I'm married. And some people out there are married saying, I might be happier if I was divorced. And so there's a lot of these things that we put this kind of undue focus on that we think will make us happy. And the reason my company is called Focus on the 40 is that the science says that about 40% of our happiness is within our control. It's something that we can be doing through intentional actions every day. And so we need to really just pay attention to the fact that we have so much control over what we can do to be making our lives that we live that are happy. And I think that that's one of the other myths too, is that, we think about happiness as being only joy and elation and laughter and all those things that feel good. And there's a whole other side of what we know about happiness that is sort of more of like contentment and pride in life and purpose in life. We call those eudaimonia. versus hedonia. And those are the harder parts of happiness that are present for us in all sorts of ways in our lives, including in our work. And that's why I do a lot of work with workplaces, because I want them to understand that, this work shouldn't necessarily be just easy. And if it was easy, it might be too boring. So we actually kind of need work to provide challenges for us. And those challenges for us can be really impactful to our fulfillment in life.
Really. Now, still wanted to talk about happiness. We talk about being happy. Why do we have to focus on happiness? Don't you think that it can result to unhappiness, or it can result to disappointment, in the sense that you telling us that, or the world out there tells us we should find happiness in this, we should be happy in this, we should be happy in that. And then it becomes, something we want to work on. It begins to control us. Now we are controlled by this, and we really want to do all that we can in order to be happy. What is the side effect of this? Doesn't it lead to stress, or is there any other, should we be looking at the side effects or the good side?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're talking a little bit about toxic positivity, like this kind of this pathology almost around just being happy all the time, right? And I think if we can redefine happiness, you can understand what it can look like to be happy even through the hard stuff, even that we're not meant to feel elation and joy all the time. We're not neurochemically wired to feel those things. We get positive emotions, we feel good things. There are chemicals related to those feelings, neurochemicals that are related to those feelings, and then they go away. They metabolize in our body, and we kind of come back to where we are in between. Now, I love interviews. I love these engagements. I love these questions, right? So like on a scale of 0 to 10 right now, I'm probably feeling like an 8. I'm like enjoying this. This is fun, and then when we get done with this, within 20 minutes or so, I'll kind of come back to where I was before. I'll come back to this place. And hopefully that place is contentment, is a place of like, in that moment in time, I feel content, recognizing that elation and joy is really fun. And I should try to find that in my life. But if that's what we're chasing all the time, then we are putting this sort of like this, a focus on something that we can't really attain in a regular way. And so how can you try to understand what happiness is and kind of understand the robustness of happiness as the word? We might be better off calling it subjective well-being or life satisfaction. That's kind of what the terms are in positive psychology, instead of happiness, because a lot of us associate happiness with these ha moments, And so I think if you can continue to chase that, and even honoring that some of these things that will make us feel happy, and maybe happy should be called also pride in what you're doing, contentment and pride, right? Those happen sometimes in retrospect and looking back on like, I did that really hard thing. And when I was doing that really hard thing, you said you're in the middle of getting your master's degree, right? That is probably not very fun, right? It's not the kind of thing where you're sitting around being like, this master's just makes me laugh and smile all day long, right? But you know that it's going to provide purpose in your life. It's going to enable you to do other things in your life. And you're going to be hopefully prideful at the end of that training, so that you're done and you're like, I'm really glad I did that thing, because now I can do all of these other things. Now that's great. I'm just going to tell you to be happy as you're going through that process of being like, I'm doing this. I have to remember that I'm pushing through these hard moments because of the value that's perceived about what I'm doing in this program.
All right. So don't you think we should be talking about fulfillment instead of talking about happiness?
I think we should say that last part again.
Are they related? Do you think we should be talking about fulfillment instead of talking about happiness? Do they go hand in hand?
Yeah, I think hand in hand is the way I would say it. I mean, we use this term happiness, and that term's not going to go away. I think we just kind of have to unpack what happiness means. And so fulfillment is certainly part of that, right? And fulfillment and then joy can be part of that as well. And that's actually kind of like my purpose statement in life, is to help people find joy and fulfillment. I want people to experience joy, but I also want them to experience fulfillment. Fulfillment is not necessarily always the fun stuff. And one of the ways that I describe, and you use the word fulfillment, and I really do like that word, is one of the slides I use kind of shows like an x-axis and a y-axis. And on the x-axis is eudaimonia that I talked about before. That's this virtuous living. This is purpose-filled life. It's volunteering. It's service to other people. It's all of those things in life. Now, if that's all you have in your life, it could be really dry. Like that's kind of like an empty life if it's always about other people and it's always about just learning and just like committing to being like this better person or whatever that would be. And then there's the y-axis, which is like taking vacations and eating cheeseburgers and going out and having fun and going to comedy shows. But if that's all you do, that could be really fun, but that's kind of empty. It could be kind of shallow. And so what happens is when you try to figure out where in there for you is that combination of things in your life that provide you with purpose and fulfillment and also with joy. And that's unique for you. It's different for you than it would be for me. And what makes you happy and what gives you fulfillment and joy aren't the same thing for me, and that's okay. But you can be investing in those things to have this kind of rich and robust, fulfilling life that includes all of those components.
Now, Anthony, you're also you workplace consultant, as I highlighted earlier.
Yeah.
Now, I'd like us to talk about workplace and also relationship building. How interrelated is this? Now, what relationship building, and how can we incorporate it into our workplace? Now, I know that this can be pretty difficult, especially when we look at, the human psychology and communication. So how best can we achieve this?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I say about human beings, right? First of all, I don't know about you, but I'm normal and everybody else is crazy, right? So anybody else I come in contact with, like, they're all just different from me. And I know that I'm normal, right? And I'm saying that for those that aren't watching the video, I'm joking, right? I'm crazy in my own special way and hopefully not harmful in it. But the best thing about life on this planet, and the thing that has been shown through the science of positive psychology, the most significant thing that you can do to have a happy life is to invest in life-enhancing relationships. That means and they're bidirectional, right? There's reciprocal nature to those relationships, but they take time. Relationships don't happen overnight. Relationships can be really hard, and some relationships can be toxic, and you can't ignore the toxic ones. But relationships at work should really matter. And I think that's one of the things in workplaces that, that we're coming around to, and we're seeing more and more of the importance of investing in people, especially when it's really hard to retain people, when people have a lot of job mobility and options, that they're going to move and they're going to go to another job and they can make more money, whatever that is. If you can create a team of people that have really strong relationships, that have enjoyed working together, that have solved big problems together, that have achieved a lot together, those are relationships have real value, and people won't leave for another job if they have a really strong culture of people internally. Now, one of the big reasons that people are leaving is that, from the Great Recession, the Great Resignation was all really about opportunity. People wanted to see that they had an opportunity to move and grow up within a company. And so that's that kind of thing we spoke to right off at the beginning of the podcast about giving people an opportunity to grow. Like, we're all in this process of growth, and our work should enable that. Like, we should be able to go to a workplace and leave there a few years later, if that's when we leave, being a different person. Like, I walked away from that experience of working here. I have really great relationships. I've really grown as a human being, both personally and professionally, through that time. And I think that's what people are looking for. And of course, it makes them happy. And so that's a win-win-win for everybody involved.
Oh, really? Now we have some teams who are getting promoted in the workplace, right?
Yep.
But really, underlying factor, they aren't happy. What do you suggest they do?
If they're not happy in the work that they're doing?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, it can have a lot of different components to it. Some of it is, one of the reasons that people leave their jobs is they don't like their supervisor. They don't like their manager. Those people aren't leading them in a way that they really want to be led. That's hard. Leading other people is really challenging. I think one of the things that you can really do is just try to figure out, and looking at your life, and I mean your whole life, right? So it's not just work, but where do you find moments that you really enjoy what you're doing? And then how do you do more of that? So how do you actively craft? Remember what we talked about before, is it's called focus on the 40, because you have control over your actions. You have control over your behaviors. So if you're at a job and you can say, okay, these are the things that I think I'm really good at, and then I can uniquely contribute to in the workplace. How can I do more of those? And in a really good culture, trusting culture, you can be given discretion to kind of shape your job and craft your job in a way that kind of brings out the best of you and uses the best of you as much as possible. But you have to know who you are first, right? And so it's really nice when I work with teams to kind of give them some fluency around, who are you? Like, what does StrengthsFinder say about you? What are your character strengths? What's your leadership style? What do all of those pieces look like, so that you can say, oh, these are the things that if I'm doing these, I'm doing my best stuff. I'm giving my best to the workplace, and I'm going to feel really good about that. And that's actually really well. It's also connected to happiness and success too. So, the thing that I tell some people, I'm like, listen, if you're miserable at your job and you don't like the people you work for, you're losing because you don't like your job, and the workplace isn't getting the best that they can out of you either. And so sometimes it's just the wrong place. It can seem like it's the right organization to work for, and it turns out to be wrong.
Thank you, Anthony Poponi, for your insight on today's show. I'd like us to talk about authentic leadership. Anything like authentic leadership in this era of case that we have. Can you share your insight?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I love that you use the word authentic too. I think leadership has changed a lot over the years. It was like this sort of belief before that leaders at the top knew all the answers. Like you would go to them and they were wisdom, and they had all this wisdom and they could answer all the questions. And in some cases they can. I think one of the things that we think about wise people that are older than us, they just have a lot of life experience. So they have the ability of, oh, I've been through this before. Here's what we did in the past, right? These sort of things. But the world's a dynamic place and things are changing. I think one of the things about leaders that people look for that really elevates their leadership, one, which is really interesting, is humor. If people have a good sense of humor as leaders, they are perceived as better leaders. And that comes from some really interesting research. The other thing is vulnerability. For leadership to show their own fallibility and their own vulnerability when they're struggling with something, at their home life or in their work life, whatever that would be, that people have the opportunity to share that. And that gives everyone a path to seeing like, oh, they are a human being just like me. And if they can struggle with normal everyday life and still be a great leader, then I can push through some of the hard stuff in my life too, both personal and professional. So I think that's a big part of it. And, for leaders, for me, I think one of the things they can do is be humble enough to recognize what they're good at, right? Anybody should recognize what you're good at. And then you should also figure out what you're not good at. And that means finding people around you that can complement you with the things that they can provide that kind of rounds out the team.
And do you have any projects in the pipeline you'd like to share with my audience?
Could you say that one more time? Sorry.
Do you have any projects you'd like to share, any exciting news or any information that you see to my audience?
Sorry to interrupt you there. Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited to be launching a book very soon. It's called The Little Book of Workplace Happiness. And it's chock full of just really deep, short, insightful. I'm calling it the little book of workplace happiness because it's not meant to be like this thick, like a giant novel. It's meant to kind of distill down some of the biggest things that we know about what makes workplaces click, what makes them work really well. And then it's filled with activities that people can use on themselves or assessments on themselves, or they can use internally with their team. So that, would be available soon. People can find that stuff on my website, which is anthonypoponi.com.
Right, we'll be on the lookout for that. Any parting words you'd like to share with the audience?
No, I think the biggest thing you can do is just, invest in your happiness. You're the one in control of that. Investing in your happiness has been shown to enable your success. It's meant to, it builds relationships in this world. It's worth investing. And I know sometimes that making changes in your life can be hard, but do those things. You're not going to regret making those investments in elevating who you are as a person, including investing in your own happiness.
All right, now that's some tough work to do, Anthony, but we get to do that. Thank you for the motivation and for sharing your thoughts on today's show, talking about happiness. Now, such a disruptive conversation we had on the show. Anthony, I wish you the best of luck in all the projects that you embark upon. Thank you once again for your time.
Yeah. Same with you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Now, if you'd like to catch up with the missed episodes or any missed episodes of Life Well Lived, you can do so on any cost promotion or distribution platforms to bump into online and do have a great time on the show. Perhaps you are saying yourself, how can I be on this show, share disruptive mindset conversations on any topics or subjects on the personal development and self-improvement? Come on, I'll be looking forward to your mail. We can have a great show together and be the change that the world is waiting for. I need you to stay safe. Talk soon. Bye for now.